My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. I'm only here to even a score. Whoa. My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. We down right now, but did it before. Whoa. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up.
What up, Nine Nation? It's your boy Roger, and we're delayed, but we made it. It is episode number 113. As a reminder, we are the only podcast that features a former UCF national champion, a former UCF radio host, an ESPN analyst and hoops player, an infamous, yes, it's infamous rapper, our resident influencer, and IG star shooting the breeze talking UCF sports. As a reminder, please remember to like and follow us on YouTube, IG, and check out the 70-plus teams on the College Huddle and the Big 12 Huddle, some of which you got to meet this season, and more of which you'll get to meet next season. So what do we have this week? Well, it's a jam-packed show. We don't have another football game to preview, sadly, but we do have a recap for this week's BYU game. Then we'll talk a little bit about where we go from here. So why is this the most important 45 days for the next 2 years for UCF? It's a question that's being asked, and we'll try to answer it. We'll talk a little bit about recruiting. National Signing Day is tomorrow, or starts tomorrow, early National Signing Day, and goes through Friday. So there's lots to talk about there. We'll also talk about some other UCF-related stuff, the coaching merry-go-round, NIL, stadium upgrades, including bowl changes, little hoops, and we'll see where we take it from there, because that's a lot. Trey Neal will be joining us here shortly, but first, last but not least, but this time last but second, Josh Lazar. Welcome back to the stage, Josh.
I don't think I could be last if I'm first, but second, but last. Hello, world. How is everyone doing today? Me and my talking too much because of business sore throat is going to try to tough it out and then knock out an hour and a half of content, and then going back to work. This is what happens when you get old.
I feel you on the getting back to work part of this, right? We'll see. I mean, we got a lot to talk about tonight. I don't know if it'll be an hour and a half or it'll be 2 hours. It could be, because there's a lot to talk about right now, in spite of the season being over. So let's start, I guess, with BYU. Obviously, that was an L. We started out like red hot, like 14-0. The defense was playing well. We were getting after Bachmeier, which is one of the keys that I said that we needed to do. And then, the offense just, it wasn't clicking. It wasn't clicking to the point that it was. The first two series, they looked great. Scott Frost said he only had 1/3 of the offense in this season, which I believe. We talked about that in weeks past, that he didn't have the whole offense. And it was just because we didn't have the team, nor did we have the talent to be able to execute that quickly. So more to come on that. But as far as this game was concerned, they ground us down with the run game. There were several key moments where we had opportunities for us. Either drives were starting and we had a turnover, or defensively where we had the ability or to stop them, and we didn't. Interestingly, this game, there were several players that did not make the trip. They pretty much put themselves in the portal, one of which, Jacob Good, did that right before the game. So he actually traveled, went to the game on a depleted roster, and then told them before the game started that he was putting himself in the portal. And by all accounts, he had to find his own way home. So that was pretty interesting. So there's a lot to talk about there. NIL, the coaching carousel craziness, the players, and what happens with the players through all of this, what the end effect of that is. But for now, we've got to look forward to high school recruiting. And the final score was 41-21, as everyone knows. crazy stat here. Both teams 6 of 13 on third down efficiency. So same number of third downs. The difference was getting ahead of the chains early for BYU. They got 21 first downs to R13. They had 407 yards to R296. Passing was very similar, 289 to 254. Rushing was not, 118 to 42 rushing yards. And then penalties, 6 for 34, 4 for 40. But the big one is 2 drive killers and 2 turnovers that really, really hurt us during this game. Josh, you watched the game. You know, those are the stats, but general impressions of the team, what you were expecting. You know, I know our chat was popping the first half for sure. But what was your impression?
So I really think it was one of those games where we had, you know, how you like script the first possession. A lot of teams can do that. I feel like they found a couple of things that they can exploit. I think I even talked about that in some of the press conferences, or not the Penn State head coach of that is staying at BYU that was talking about. They put in some things that were a little different, and one good stop, we get 14 straight points. Everything was hitting on all cylinders. And then we played against the team that should be in the college football playoff, and unless they beat Texas Tech, is going to probably be bumped out. So,
well, let me ask you, because you said something, panic played, right? So, you know, one of the things that's controversial but not, there was a play, the first pickoff, that kind of really took the momentum or the wind out of our sails when we had a little bit of a trick play that was going on. That honestly, had that ball been passed to Taven a little bit earlier, probably would have went for big yards, if not a TD.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a good way. If we're going to make the assumption, and not, you know, I have no reason not to believe it. If 1/3 of the plays are in, you already have a smaller roster, right, before the last game. There are some people who didn't travel, from what it sounds like. Doing everything possible to try to pull an upset against like easily a top, I'd say right now, obviously top 11. I didn't see it's, well, depends on who you ask. But right now, if we didn't have automatic qualifiers for the 5th and 6th conference champion, probably a playoff team, I think we did as good as a job as we could have to start, and then played against how you would expect to play against a team of that caliber. And frankly, you know, couldn't hang. And that's
well,
sad,
I think
it's true.
I think Econ makes a great point here, right? BYU got back into it and were able to control the game with the ground game, right? So early on, before, when we got ahead of the chains and got ahead of the score, 14-0, we can make them pass the ball. And that was not their strength, right? He's a running quarterback, and the running game behind Fields, that really is the strength of their offense, which is good when you have a good defense that's paired along with it, right? Which BYU does. So they wanted to control the clock. They basically played what, for lack of a better term, SEC football, right? In the sense that that's what the SEC is known for. So is the Big Ten, which is we've got bigger lines than you. We're going to run the rock down your throat, and we're going to beat you and control the clock. That only works if you're ahead or even with your opponent. And UCF got out to a hot start at 14-0, and that allowed us to pin our ears back on Bachmeier, who was not good. And that's what Econ advisors pointing out here. As far as quite a few players didn't make the trip, those looking to transfer, yes. Those that are injured and those that were looking to transfer. So the short of it is, yes, Econ. I think there were 12 or 13 different players that didn't make the trip. Not to mention some of the injuries that were, full-time injuries where folks were out for the season. A lot of those folks didn't make the trip. So yeah, there were a lot of folks on an already depleted roster that didn't make the trip for that reason. So depth obviously is a problem for us, but you just can't leave the defense out there that long, and just some inopportune turnovers that killed drives. Econ says BYU fans and web pundits livid how they are still ranked, but BYU's horrid preseason schedule doomed their chances. Even UCF played a power school. Yeah, they did give 3 TDs to UCF, but we also played a lot better than we offensively than we've had in the past, right?
And let's be clear about this. Texas is also in the other side of that statement. Texas is complaining that they're not going to probably make it in because they dared to play Ohio State instead of playing Ohio, right? So it kind of runs both ways. Your schedule is generally what your schedule is, and sometimes you just need to look at who you're playing. And if they play Texas Tech close, all right. If they beat them, this is going to, it's probably the best thing for the Big 12, because we get 2 schools in. They're not going to drop Texas Tech out of there for losing. I don't think they're too high up right now. BYU would get that 4th spot more than likely based off their ranking, and Texas Tech would probably knock one of the 15 SEC schools that are in there. But that's the reality of it. And right now, it's really weird. You can play 3 cupcakes and then have the same conversation, Econ saying that, your horrid preseason schedule, or you can take a chance at a really tough team and still be left out. And truth be told, if it was the exact same exact same wins and losses at the Big Ten or in the SEC against similarly ranked week in and out opponents, I don't think we have this conversation. I still think there's a significant level of bias to those 2 conferences, and that's part of the problem. Also part of the problem is BYU. Part of our problem is BYU, Cincinnati, Houston all came in about the same time as us. And I know people hate me saying it, but think about those institutions and their alumni and how deep the pockets are across the board. We're still a startup as opposed to those other teams. Okay, and I think fiscally there's a difference.
You say that, but it came out today that you mentioned BYU's head coach. He was only making $3 million a year.
Correct. So, and that's why not the school, but the alumni are going to pony up so he doesn't go off to Penn State and figure it out a way. You're correct, and the church isn't paying for this, and that's a lot of stuff that's been talked about. The church isn't paying for this. The alumni are, and there's $12 billion companies around Utah, or right around the whole Provo and Salt Lake City area. I'm not going to get too far off on the tangent, but the difference between UCF and the Houstons of the world, SMU's too, not in our conference, but the same thing is Texas Tech is a great example with Lee Hunter. They can buy the teams to be where they need to be. I don't know if that is sustainable long term. I don't know if that's the right thing for the sport. It already kind of feels that way. Not great in professional baseball, right? Even as a fan of a team that likes to spend a lot of money and doesn't do well since the early 2000s, it's just not really what this was meant to be. Enrich the players, but it's creating just some kind of not great things, in my opinion.
So going back to Econ's point, and this was my point too, the best chance for the Big 12 to get 2 in at this point is for BYU to beat Tech. We were talking to the BYU insider last week, and he was mentioning that he thought that they needed to beat the brakes off of us and then keep it close against Tech and go in. But I don't think that will be the case. Unfortunately, I think they need to beat Tech. That being said, our game 41-21, we start thinking about the future. We start looking at the performance, right? And there's Taven Jackson to talk about, right? Most people think, myself included, that he's going to leave. and I think that's going to be the case. Last week against BYU, not a bad game, not a terrible, not a great game, but not a bad game either, right? To Econ's point, though, I do think the ACC, which is funny, ironic, the way that they have their setup, they will not have Miami playing in the championship game, and a 7-5 Duke will actually be playing in the championship game. So if they do happen to win the ACC championship, they are automatically put in Econ. They can't leave the ACC completely out based on the current structure. I'm not sure, you're talking about BYU's head coach. I'm not sure that happened, but I do know that they put an extra package in there. And yes, he was ready to leave for the Penn State job. And when we start talking about that, the coaching carousel, that's one of the things that's interesting is what schools started late and which schools are going to get left holding the bag. And Penn State looks like it's one of them. And a big part of that is because of Jimmy Sexton. So he made some comments today. As you know, Jimmy Sexton is a huge part of agencies and agents, and he's a huge agent for pretty much every major coach and in the league. And so basically, Jimmy feels like Penn State screwed his coach in firing Franklin when they did. And because of that, he's making it really, really hard on other coaches to take the job at Penn State. So that came out today too, and he made some comments himself. Now, going back to our game, Miles Montgomery averaged 4 yards per carry, but only had 7 carries. Dwayne Thomas Jr., 4.3 yards per carry, but only 4 carries. We had 19 total carries in rushing this entire game. And that's because we got behind. DJ Black drops again. I think this highlighted again. When you're at this level, you need to be able, if you can get 2 hands on a football, you need to be able to catch the ball. If you can't catch the ball, you need to turn over to a defensive back or a blocking tight end for some of these guys, right? The bottom line is, with all of this stuff, defense played fairly well. Lewis Carter showed out again. Cole Kozlowski, who is going for a 6th year, it'll be interesting. I'd love to get him back because he and Lewis Carter are 2 pieces of this year's defense that I would really, really, really like to have back. As far as, the Taven question, he's not QB1 next year. I believe, and we'll talk about this in recruiting, that we'll go out and get the best quarterback that we can in the portal. So one of the things that's different about this year, one of the things that's different this year than in years past is we have a GM now. And what that means is that Frost is no longer negotiating those contracts the last week of the season, number one. And number two, he's no longer having to negotiate those contracts with quarterbacks and everybody himself. So he's got a general manager. Those conversations about those quarterbacks are happening now. So that portal window will open up again at the end of this year. But, those conversations about QB1 are already happening. And I don't think Taven will be here next year because he knows he won't be QB1 next year. Unfortunately, he just hasn't shown enough. Wayden Charles, absolutely a bright spot. We were talking about that a couple of weeks ago. Wayden Charles is a bright spot. He will earn his cheddar. So I'm glad that he's coming back, but we are going heavy in the portal with the portal and high school recruiting with wide receivers. So that will be interesting to follow along as well. As far as, one of the things, again, in the Big 12 is winning on the road. And that's something that we have to figure out, right? That is something that we absolutely have to figure out. So, Josh, in your opinion, what do you think UCF has to do next year to turn some of those L's into dubs?
Oh, I mean, it really starts with the lines. I think that's a like no duh, Josh, but it really starts with the lines. Well, it starts with the lines, and it would be nice if we didn't get so many injuries. It starts with the lines because, and truth be told, I'll say I'll start with the offensive line, which was a bit offensive. It, it's just we weren't consistent, and I love Trey even if he pops in to maybe get more of the professional view of it. Rubel, great, appreciate him being here 6 years. You know, good guy. At times, solid on offensive line. At times, a swinging gate, and like just not good. And that level of inconsistency hurries up the quarterbacks. Like there's times against the better lines and the better teams where it doesn't matter who's the QB back there unless they're McKenzie or who had some good lines or others, right? You can only do so much. So I think the offensive line is the beginning part. From there, keeping as many people on defense as you can within reason. That was a pretty darn good defense most of the year when we were healthy. So keeping as much as you can and backing it up with uh, maybe some portal transfers, maybe some. I prefer more high school students, to be honest, and building them up with a little bit of portal transfer. I think that's what it's going to end up being, a little bit of mix of that. And at that point, there's really only one other thing we need.
Josh, it'll be mostly portal. There's only expected 16. There's only 16 commitments for signing day for high school.
Yeah, and that's all. I don't know. Part of that, I feel like I know that Frost wants to go with high school. I thought it was only 13, but I know he wants to go with the high school commitments, but maybe they're being more picky and choosy with that. And truthfully, if they can they retain their defense, and they should know within reason who they can and cannot retain at the moment, they might be comfortable with where they're at, add in some portal, add in some high school, go from there. Truth be told, we need to nail the choice of offensive alignment as best as we can within reason, and we got to get a quarterback. I think Taven Jackson with an upgraded line is a lot better. I think maybe with a running back that doesn't whiff on blocks, we have 2 less injuries. Cam just got destroyed against was it Jack State when it was that Jack State. I was sitting, he was towards the 50-yard line. I think it was Nixon just completely whiffed and he got laid out. There were a couple of times like that that happened to the QB. So I think even if they were 100% healthy with the offensive line as it was, we're not. Maybe we get the 6th win, but I think it starts with the offensive line that can make up for a youthful QB or can solidify a experienced QB. I think we keep as many, the good playmakers, Wayne Charles and those you're talking about, and keep as much of the defense we can. I don't think we're that far away from winning one on the.
Well,
I think we're not. I don't think we're close to being Texas Tech because we don't have $50 million. But I don't think we're far from competitive almost every game, middle of the pack, maybe punching above our weight.
So I think we could be Arizona State long term, right? But going back to this defensive question, how many defensive starters are graduating or considering NFL? Okay, so first of all, that's a different question as to how many are transferring. So I'll go through some of those as well. The Henderson twins, one of them did not crack the rotation. So both of them are in jeopardy of going into the portal. So it'll be interesting to see. They have tested the waters with the portal the last couple of years because they weren't getting playing time. But now you've got the twins, and it'll be interesting because one will only be able to probably go to an FAU level type team, and it'll be interesting to see if they split or not. So, Damari and Jakari, one has really popped this season and got into the starting rotation, and the other has not. So it'll be interesting to see, but they're redshirt juniors. As far as the starters are concerned, Antoine Jackson, he's a junior, so he should be back next year. Christian Peterson is a sophomore. He may transfer. Philip Dunham declared for the NFL draft, so he will not be back. DJ Bell should be back. He's a redshirt junior. He should be back next year. Gould, we already talked about. He's gone. Jaden Bellamy should also be back next year. So that's exciting for the defensive backs. As far as John Walker, he, believe it or not, is a redshirt sophomore. So he will be back. Frost made a comment a couple of weeks ago that he said the defensive guys, the important key defensive guys, the general manager had already worked out the NIL deal. So I expect John Walker to be back. Derek LeBlanc will be back. He started making a name for himself, defensive tackle. Horace Lockett will be back. He was a redshirt junior this year, so he should actually have 2 years if he wants to take advantage of it. RJ Jackson Jr. will also be back. Redshirt sophomore Jefferson LaFontaine. The last 2 or 3 games, he started making a name for himself as well. He's only a redshirt sophomore, so we should have him for a few more years. Rodney Laura will be back. He got some playing time, redshirt sophomore. Jamal Johnson should be back. Malachi Lawrence will not be back. He will be testing the NFL. Isaiah Nixon will be back. And Nigel Kelly, obviously, he will be moving on to the NFL as well. Sincere Edwards will be back, which is exciting. We only got to see him for a few games, and he was starting to get into the groove of things. He's only a sophomore, so I'm not sure if he was able to redshirt this year because I think he may have played or been available for too many games. But if he was able to redshirt, he will definitely be back. So that's exciting. And then as far as the linebackers are concerned, TJ Bullard has availability. Troy Ford Jr. is only a redshirt sophomore, but I expect one of those two, if not both, to transfer. Kelly Lawson is a redshirt senior this past year, so he's trying for another year. So we may be able to get him back. Lewis Carter is a junior, so as long as we can pay him, we should be getting him back. Bill Picchiotti, he was a highly rated transfer from Oklahoma. Unfortunately for him, he's a redshirt sophomore. So unfortunately for him, he had both knees had ACLs, and he was still recovering. So he was a 5-star linebacker that went to Oklahoma. If we can get him back next year and he's healthy, would be okay. Cole Kozlowski is filing for a 6th year, so he may come back. He's part of that court filing that came up on guys that played in FBS or other divisions that want an extra year, basically saying, hey, this shouldn't be applied to us because we didn't get to play in Division I. We've earned that right. So those rules should only apply for that. So he's a senior. Technically, he's out of time, but he's filed for an exception, and he's also part of that lawsuit that was out there. Cam Moore at linebacker, he'll still be available. Malachi Boone is a freshman, so that's exciting. Jaden McDonald, he was a Virginia Tech transfer. He played well early. We were excited about him. He was a redshirt senior, so he may have some time. He may have another year to come back as well, which would be exciting. So as far as the linebacking core is concerned, I think we're pretty set for the core nucleus that we have there. So I'm excited about that. I keep saying I'm excited about things, but really defensively, that covers the defense. So we have the opportunity to bring a lot of this defense back. D tackles should be good. We're really missing on the ends, but we have Isaiah Nixon to fill in, and we're bringing some other people. So I expect us to bring some people in from the portal there as well. So that's really the defense. Offense, we've got a lot of young guys, and those are pretty much the only guys that we're going to keep, right? Offensive line, Paul Rubelt, the aforementioned Paul Rubelt, was the only guy that we brought back from last year. He's off. He's done for his career. Everybody else, I don't think they're keeping. So it'll be interesting to see. Econ says Frost then beat Auburn. UCF could declare him. So UCF was both classy and got the reputation that got him into the Big 12. Yes. That's not the reputation we had in 2015, the first time they were looking. So thanks for checking on the defensive returners. Nobody else has done this. That's what we do it for. If you guys have questions, make sure you put them in live. It just makes the show better, and it's what you want to hear. And he says, so got 2 edges back. Carter's too small to attract lots of NIL money. Worried NIL we could lose Walker. Walker is already locked up. Walker's not going anywhere. Unless somebody could drop a $2 million bag or something on Walker, like what happened last year. But as my understanding from what Frost has said, all the defensive guys that they wanted to keep, and there was a lot of defensive tackle, have already been negotiated with and are coming back for next year. He also played really heavily in that final game against BYU. And, again, he doesn't have a lot of tape, so I expect him to come back next year.
Yeah, I hope he does. Listen, he wanted to be a hometown hero, if you will. And honestly, I think there's a lot of I feel like he's one of the group of UCF beginning to end that's going to make the NFL or at least get a good shot at it. Has lots of good tape against lots of good offensive lines, both prior and post. And yeah, if someone drops like 1.5 in a house, in a car, and your family can get shuttled to every single game, sure, yeah, that's going to happen. It's kind of like a Lee Hunter scenario, but I hope that he sticks around for a lot of reasons, both for him personally, if he can get the funding he needs to do the things he wants to do, and for UCF. So, but yeah,
here's an off the wall thought.
Sure.
So I don't know what the rules are on this, but now that the Big Ten, Big Ten has shares, right? I wonder, I know that they're going to distribute all the revenue through the conference for the players. That's how that's happening. It's not being distributed out of the schools directly. I'm wondering if the Big Ten is an added bonus. One way to differentiate yourself is why not offer shares in the Big Ten conference? Or if you're like SMU, hey, I'll give you shares in an oil rig. Pay me an oil rig. So I would totally take that. But it's interesting to see because they're starting to get very, very creative in how all this stuff will work. The other thing that's interesting of note that came out within the last week or so is, as far as NIL is concerned, we had been talking about how UCF had a better opportunity for this upcoming season because we had a more even playing field. Well, surprise, surprise, something I didn't understand. And like in NASCAR, they say, if you ain't cheating, you aren't winning. Well, all of these teams that front-loaded these NIL deals that we talked about, they literally front-loaded their NIL deals, which means they signed and paid for multi-year contracts for the players that they did before the cutoff happened, right? So the Lee Hunters of the world and whatever, they did multi-year contracts for them. So what does that mean? That means that they don't count towards the cap, right? That starts this year. So anybody who spent all of that money, that $50 million or whatever last year, and paid for their roster, that means they still get the full $20 to $22 million cap space, because that's what it is, to be able to acquire talent this year. So they can keep their $50 million roster and add talent for that $20 million roster. So Texas Tech did that last year. So that means they don't lose anything this year. They still get another $20 million because they're already bought and paid for the team that's overlapping into the multi-year contract. So we've got at least one more year before we truly have an even playing field. So it's really, really interesting how this NIL piece is shaking out. And there's some some things that is another dynamic to this, and we'll go into the coaching carousel because we were talking about it a little bit. I guess I'll change the banner because we completely jumped the shark as far as the game is concerned. Yeah, and one of the things that that's interesting is now, the Kiffin situation got mentioned. Obviously, the Kiffin situation was the circus of college football this week, right? Or last 2 weeks, really. Yeah. So what's interesting with the NIL piece of that too is now you've got these coaches that are leaving, right, in their institutions before the season is done and taking rosters with them before the season is done, like in the Ole Miss situation, right? So when you look at that and you think about it from an NIL perspective, that means the new school that hires a coach, they've already been negotiating the collective. That's a new part of the negotiations for coaches is how much money are you going to put up, just like it used to be for salary pools for coaches. They're doing the same thing for NIL. And what does that do to those contracts, right? Like, okay, so all those players at Ole Miss that Lane Kiffin's trying to take, like, what does that do to their contracts? Is there kickers or there boost kickers for them to come over with him? Certain players to come over, or how does that work? So it's been an interesting few weeks, and honestly, like no other professional sports league, and don't kid yourself now, college football is a professional sports league, whether they are classified as W-2 employees or not. It's a professional sports league. Plays in this way. I mean, you think about all the chaos that's been happening. You've got Arkansas. Lane Kiffin, it came out today, was supposed to go to Florida, and he met with AD Strickland, and then he decided to go elsewhere, right? So you've got that. Everybody was waiting on Lane Kiffin to make his decision. So for UCF, one of the advantages of this is, and that may pay off, right, is that Coach Frost is committed and has already been through the cycle and has already been paid. So if he is successful, and we all hope he is, then there should be some stability there because he has no reason to leave, right? At least in the short term or whatever. I mean, if Alabama came out and said, "Hey, we're going to pay you $10 million to go coach Alabama," okay, cool. But I think that positions UCF well in the future in the coaching carousel, because if we look at where OSU was, I went onto the OSU podcast. If we were OSU and got there late in the game, we wouldn't have a proverbial pot to piss in, right? When it comes to being in this coaching search. So it's really, really interesting to see how that happened. And then you have agents not only affecting the players, but agents are now affecting the coaches and where they go and basically blackballing schools. And this is, I mean, Penn State is a quasi blue blood school. And if it's happening there, is this finally the impetus? And think about it from how this affects UCF. If the SEC finally gets tired of them rating each other's schools and having to pay $20 or $50 million exits every single time, right? They're getting paid more now. But if you're dropping $50 million to 3 coaches, like FSU did for a while, and basically bankrupt their program, right? How long does that go on before the SEC steps in and Greg Sankey steps in and actually comes in and says, "Hey guys, we need to put some rules around these coaches. Hey guys, we need to put some rules around these players." Because I think what's going to end up happening, which is good for UCF, is if it continues to happen this way, then what'll end up happening is we end up with a players union and collective bargaining, because I think that's what's going to end up happening. Econ checks in. He says, when coaches take players and assistant coaches with them, that causes a mass exodus by other players who see no chance on being a winner. Well, that goes back to, okay, what about those players that are left behind? I think then it goes back to, what coach are you bringing in? Right? So if you got, and that only works for the high level players, those mid players, you're right, they're going to be a mass exodus. So how does that set up for UCF for the portal? So as we talked about earlier, we talked about the portal versus non-portal and the importance of the next 45 days. Got early signing day. That's coming up. And it starts tomorrow. So at 7 o'clock in the morning, they'll start, quote unquote, faxing their letters of intent in, right? Now, some of the players won't. One of them is waiting until the Under Armour game, which we've seen that before, and that worked out pretty well for us. But this is who we have right now that we're expecting to sign starting tomorrow. So obviously we talked about 4-star Rocco Marriott. We've also got edge rusher. Okay, I'm going to try this. El Hassan Idrisu from Modesto, California.
Sure.
He is 4-star on ESPN. 3 stars on the other two. Dante Carr, our second quarterback who may turn into a tight end. He's expected to sign tomorrow. He's a 3-star across the board. Rivals has him the most highly rated at 89, 247, 88. So borderline 4-star. Kaj Baker, he is expected to sign tomorrow. He's 52. He's number 52 in his position. He's a little light in the frame. He's 5'7", 160. And he's listed as a running back, right? So this is more of that new scat pack trying to mold that we see. So he's going to sign. Preston Hall will sign tomorrow. He is another 3-star linebacker. Good size to him. He's 6'3", 215 pounds. Elijah Keys from Neptune Beach. He'll be signing tomorrow. Keziah Charlton, Amon Williams. He's an offensive lineman. Keziah Charlton is a 6'6", 280-pound offensive tackle from Brunswick, Georgia, which Trey knows very well. Matthew Ochapinti from New Jersey will be signing. He's a linebacker, 6'3". And then running back Arthur Lewis, which we're all familiar with from Jacksonville. Excited about him. He's 5'10", 185 pounds. So think he's more of the Miles Montgomery type mold right now. So he'll put some weight on that frame. If he gets to be around 205, 210 pounds, he's going to be tough. Amarion Queen, Jakari Jackson, who from Olympia High School, he's one of those hometown hero guys. He's listed as an athlete, but he's basically a defensive back. He's from Olympia High School. He will actually be delayed. He will not sign this week. He allegedly has some school issues or grade issues to work out before he can sign. And then Brooks Hall from Platte City, Missouri, which he's a 6'5" tight end, 225 pounds. He's a guy who played with Rocco Marriott in high school, and he was recruited to South Dakota State, but a highly rated or highly thought of tight end. He'll be coming with Rocco. So that's who we expect to sign over the next 3 days. So if you notice, not a whole lot of star power, comparatively speaking, to what we were signing before. We've been used to, top classes, but we're not signing that tomorrow. So I'm sorry, you're right. We had 13 commitments. It is one of the smallest classes in the Big 12. So Colorado and Oklahoma State have smaller classes. Oklahoma State, because they hired Eric Morris late in the recruiting cycle. And right now we rank number 72 and number 14 in the Big 12. So if we have 13 commitments, knowing how many people we're losing, we're going heavy in the portal. The thinking is, from a portal perspective, is that if we try to build through high school, basically we're at year 0 again, as we were last year. And so Scott Frost wants to jumpstart essentially the process with some of those portal players. So yeah, there's going to be some players that, especially in the quarterback room, that that we should be excited about, right? Because that could be the future for us at quarterback. But most of the players that you're going to see that are not holdovers is going to be in the portal. So we'll have some excitement over the next 3 days, but then we'll have some more excitement when the portal starts popping too. And you're right. Early enrollment is the best. And these kids, most of them are going to be early enrollees, which will give them some extra time in the weight room and to learn the plays and the system, et cetera, as they move along.
Yeah, it's just an interesting time. It's exciting, and it's not going to be Gus-like. I'll tell you that. Like Gus was very big on making sure the star power, right? Like you were saying, and we have a highly ranked class and all that. And while look, if we had the funding and if they met the desires of this group of coaches, we'd be fine. They are getting people that fit. And anyone who's built a business, anyone who's worked in a good business, anyone who's had a really good manager, sometimes you'll take a little less, not a lot, but a little, to work for a really good team or someone you believe in, or a manager that isn't a pain in the whatever. That there's a positivity to it. And if you have a pathway to going to where you want to go, like if you know that the NFL is just not in your path, but you can maximize the funding you get while you're in college and do decent for yourself, great. If you could do it while coming out the other side of that experience, like Trey is, and loving that experience and being a part of a brotherhood that's beyond just those 1, 2, 3, or 4 years. I'm sure a lot of the audience has been part of some type of fraternity or social organization at UCF, or maybe even afterwards. Maybe you've in later years have gotten that group of friends, right? There's something to it. Like there's people I talked to 26, 7 years later that I met when I was a freshman and sophomore at UCF. And yes, I know we're more professional. Yes, I know they're getting paid, but they're 19, 20, and 21-year-olds. They're still relatively kids. And I feel like a mix of getting paid, right? Being on a team that you enjoy being around other people, taking to coaching to people, put people in the NFL, and maximizing what you can during that experience. Eventually, I feel like that's going to be our competitive advantage. If we get the funding to where we need to be, if you want to talk business, that's the moat. Like the moat, the Knights in the moat. The moat we're going to build our brand around is going to be being competitive, being together, playing together. All the things that Frost did in those years that Trey was a part of, and trying to navigate this really just interesting fiscal weirdness that everyone else has to as a startup, if you will. So yeah, I feel like it's just going to be interesting. And I think the fan base is okay with steady progress, competitive teams on the field, maybe a few less penalties here or there. That would be nice, but that's what it is. And progression, right?
So
I don't think anyone expects us to be 13-0 next year, unless unless Ethereum gets to skyrocket and we drop $50-100 million into a bucket. That's not going to happen.
So Josh, I'm gonna disagree with you, right, on a couple of things. One is culture only matters when you're playing on an even playing field or someone.
That's fair
financially, right? So
yeah.
You're right. It can be a differentiator, but we have to be able to compete in the NIL space no matter what. It's kind of like if you want to look at professional teams, right? When it comes to cap, it's like the New York Yankees and the Tampa Bay Rays, right? So when you start thinking about those two teams, the New York Yankees have the most money out of anybody, right? So think about your SEC teams. Even Ole Miss blows us away right now, right? And they're getting ready. And you think about this, an SEC team, Ole Miss, that has way more money than we are, is getting rated by LSU right now, right?
Yeah.
So for us, for those things to matter, right, you have to have continuity in coaching, you have to have success, and then you also have to have a payroll that's at least competitive for those other things to matter at this point.
Oh, no, I agree with that. And that's what I'm saying. If you're going to get 3 times the amount of money elsewhere, I get it. But if you're getting a little more, sometimes cash rolls everything around me. Sometimes it doesn't. If it's close. I'm not comparing what we can try to do to the Texas Tech or LSU or anyone that's going to spend private or funding they get from contracts, just to buy a team, like buy a team and just do that. The Dodgers, great example.
Doyers.
You know what? But they spent the money, maximized how they were going to do that with a Ohtani contract that's going to be really fun for them in years down the road, but probably already paid back a lot of benefits. And trying to do, we can't be that. Can we be a team that fights hard, that is sound, that is competitive, that is better than we've been the last 4 or 5 years? I think so. I really do. And I agree with you. Yeah, we're not going to compete with someone, if someone gave anyone in the audience 3 times their salary to do the same exact thing, and you could probably expect that for the next couple years. Most people are going to dip. I mean, Kiffin did it for like 3-4 million a year more. Yeah, something like that. And so, which again, right, is about 20, near 25% more of what he was making. That's just the reality. We understand that. But if we're competing against the people who have a similar funding scheme, and the difference is you actually like your coach, he's not a turd to you. You are respected by others, and you're trying to build together as a team, and you're not just a bunch of siloed teenagers mostly that are trying to figure out the world while figuring out a game, while making money, while not trying to blow it all. There might be some value to that.
Listen, you got to hang out by gas stations and have your Hellcat. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Roger,
that's why you sent us all those texts.
Yes, that's why. That's for those of you, just as a side note, I am negotiating very heavily on a Hellcat, so I may be posting a video from a gas station at some point with my Hellcat soon.
That's going to be that should be our intro graphic, is like all of us mean mugging at a gas station with a Hellcat.
I'm doing my part, so I'll have to do that in Orlando when I'm down there. All right. So in other UCF news, one thing we're talking about is the players that we wanted to keep, right? So Dylan Wade is definitely one of those guys that we want to keep on the offense. He actually broke the record for most catches and yards and TDs in a single season by a tight end. And we've had some pretty good tight ends. That guy, Jalen Atkins. I've made that joke so many times now. I have to think about what his actual name is. But anyway, he had a great season and someone we definitely want to keep. And I think he can do more because remember, he was injured for a few games and we were going to him early. And that was one of the things I said when he was injured is we are missing him because that's who Taven was going to. And he's a great pass catching tight end. Is he the greatest blocker? No, but it's definitely, is definitely someone that we want back. RJ Harvey, if you've been checking out our Twitter line, he was killing it, got 2 TDs last game as a starter. Here's something ironic. Paul Rubel was selected to the American Bowl.
That's great.
Considering he's German, for those of you that don't know that.
Yeah.
So that was pretty funny. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is, going back to, let me run through a couple of news notes. The stadium upgrades have restarted again. So if you slide by the stadium anytime soon, this is due to be done in 2026. So expect a lot of movement there. Also of note is 3 bowl games from the Citrus Bowl are going to be played at UCF next year. That is the Cheez-It Bowl, the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and the weirdest name bowl I've ever heard of, the Staff DNA. I hate to say this to those people, but all I think about is staph infection DNA. Like you're getting the DNA of the staph infection when you're talking about this. Like worst bowl name ever. It's like the Roadkill Bowl or something. I don't know, man. It's just terrible. But they will be playing next year, which will start to pay for that. Now, we've kind of touched on this with the coaching merry-go-round. But I want to talk about this a little bit because one of the things that you saw is Kentucky, right? And the University of Kentucky was late to the game. They fired their coach, paid him $16 million or whatever, and he's off to the races, which is fine. But they waited, right? And they waited for everybody else. It's different strategies, right? You waited for everyone else to go through their coaching staff, and it really showed a pecking order. They signed Will Steen. So Will Steen was somebody that was really interested before we knew that we were getting Frost. Will Steen was actually, wow. Econ says bowls at the Bounce House makes sense with low attendance numbers anyway.
I will go on your Will Steen conversation. I want to talk about that for a second because it's not as bad as you think, and you'd be surprised at who is the best of those bowls. Keep going.
Cheez-It?
All right, go right into it.
Is it the Cheez-It?
No. So, okay, we got 3 games in 2026, and there's only one of those games that I want to actually see, and it's not a bowl game. So the Cheez-It Bowl got something like 46,000, which is perfect. This is why we're right at capacity. The lower of the 2 bowls, I forgot which one it is. There was the Staff DNA, right? They actually got 30 or 35,000 people. I don't know if that's sold tickets or whatever, but wasn't bad. Cheez-It, pretty solid. Always good, 2 good teams, and somehow they have to do something innovative with that toaster and the live mascot and UCF. There has to be something fun there. The highest those 3 games that are coming is going to be the Classic, and I want to go to Bethune-Cookman versus FAMU.
Well, we haven't even talked about the Classic. I mean, this is just the bowl games that we were talking about.
You're
but
just going bowl games.
They
had 54,000 people last game when Timmy No Breaks got into the Hall of Fame for Bethune-Cookman, probably. But I'm really excited for this stuff because not only it's going to showcase UCF and the atmospheres we love on campus to a lot of people who might not, I won't say might not get that, forget that might want another change of venue. And I really think that it's going to bring in revenue, obviously. It's going to bring in just people enjoying the campus and going, oh, that's UCF across. Well, maybe the Cheez-Its Bowl will have a Big 12 team that's like, oh, yeah, we've been here, done that. And if it's us, but that's a whole nother story. So I'm really excited about that. When I first saw that, I'm like, that's great. And then I started looking at the bowl and the Classic attendance. I'm like, I know FAMU, Bethune-Cookman. Are they BCU now? Is that because I'm so used to Bethune-Cookman College when I went there? I want to go to that game. I want to figure out how to go to that game because I've been to that game before and it's always fun. I think with everyone on top of each other in tight quarters because they will sell out that game is a guaranteed sellout. I think that's going to be probably one of the most fun non-UCF games that will ever be played in that stadium for a while.
And so Econ thinks like me because this is what I was thinking. I think the biggest thing this does for UCF is it also validates the money that the TDT put in there. So remember, one of the things that went along with that deal was 2 things. One, we had to have X amount of money that was over it because we get a percentage up to a dollar amount of the overage of the tax dollars, right? So doing that helps. It also helps justify that. So for anybody, I don't know how many years we got that agreement for, but let's say it's 10. This makes it easier for Orange County to say yes to it in the future, right? Because we are a competitive venue. And then the other part about it is the experience, right? So if Terry does a good job, it's a great way for Orange County to take advantage of the extra suites and things that we are building out, right? It's a good showcase for that, for us to get future venues and events and maybe even compete with the Citrus Bowl in the future. I mean, we had the Cure Bowl, but whatever. So that's exciting stuff, and I'm excited for that. But I think the biggest thing is just to validate their investment.
Fair.
2017 national champions. Hello. I'm wearing your shirt today. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I don't know what you mean by any news on it. They are moving forward with it, but it's in the second or third, I think second iteration. So right now they're working on the tower. They're working on the Hagel Gateway. And they've already done, if you've been over to campus, they've already done the parking lot. They've already done the long walk with the walls. It looks really, really nice over there. In fact, when they were building it out, we got to talk to David Hansen a little while about what the plans were in the future. And he gave us actually a lot of history. Great guy. If you haven't met him, really affable guy, but he's been there since the very beginning. The Hagel Gateway will be the next thing that you'll see, along with the completion of the tower. The tower is obviously number one priority list for a lot of reasons. It has to be ready for the season and obviously now for bowl games. But then you'll see the Hagel Gateway. And then after that, it'll be the football ops center, but the football ops center is where the coaches will be, etc. That'll be phase 2 or phase 3. So not anytime soon. We could take the bonds out for that based on their agreement with Orange County. But with bonds, they'd rather see, they have to have a certain percentage of that funded for you to be able to get those bonds. So it will take a minute for that to happen. Oh gosh, Josh is saying, not with this crypto winter coming. No, listen, what we need from Taylor Durant is already in the bag. Like we're that part's going to be funded. It's just a matter of getting to it in the stages of the process. And right now it's spending that TDT money, because it's just like anything else. If you don't spend it, right, you lose it. And we need to make sure that we justify it and that we build quick enough for the bonds that we issued for the rest of to get that, because they don't just stroke you a check for the full amount. We have to get bonds that are backed by, the TDT fund, and those bonds are then issued and then we spend it. So those things have to take priority. Econ says, so many naysayers went for on-campus stadium and put us well above the Tampa school. Well, the Tampa school, the directionally challenged school from West Central Florida, as we like to call them, has now done that. And the other crazy thing, since we're talking about NIL, this is something that, I hope we've learned our lesson from as an administration. The Cows sat on their laurels and didn't put money into the football program to move themselves forward when they had the advantage, when they were in the Big East, et cetera, right? And so they put their thrust in the academic side, which is great. It got them into the AAU, right? It got them to preeminence before us, but we got there this year, right? So I hope we don't lose that. But they're doing something, in my mind, that's crazy. They're actually borrowing from the academic side to fund their NIL, because they know that they're going to be left behind if they don't do that soon. They're going to be locked out. So the Cows are spending serious money. They are going to try to continue to be competitive. They've got those facilities they're building. They aren't going to be what their renders were because they waited too long to get it started. But they have someone named Bill Weatherford in the in the legislature that makes things really hard on UCF to get things done and really easy on the cows to bend the rules. So, we'll see what happens there. I don't know. How do you feel about that from a facility standpoint, Josh? Do we need to expand capacity for basketball? I don't think there's that many sellouts unless you're talking about visiting fans, even like Kansas and everything else. I think we're right size right now. If you look at the rest of the Big 12, only a few schools have a bigger arena than what we do. I think the quality of the experience within the arena could be moved up, especially in the club areas.
So a couple things. If they can get the sound right, so they're playing from a PA system, that was a few games ago. I think they got that all fixed. I think that we are pretty good. Even I'll put on my Ben hat here. I think we are pretty good in size. If you remember the big sellouts, if you look at our top 10 attendance,
so what you're saying, Josh, is size does not matter in this case. It's the quality of the stadium.
Oh, I want to say something, and my mind just censored me. If we can fill it. So here's the reality. The Blue Man Group at halftime is probably still in our top 10 attendance records. And that was phenomenal. I was there for that and I loved it. We will probably sell out every Kansas game, Arizona game, the people we should. And honestly, those are going to be filled, I want to say 50-50, but not going to be 100% UCF fans. I think if we get the right funding and the right coach, I only say right coach, if we get the right funding, they're doing pretty decent right now with the coach. We could sell out a heck of a lot more if we were going to pivot, whatever, to a basketball school, and that's just not going to happen in the South. Really, like it just really isn't. So I feel like
the Southeast Conference is the best basketball conference. No, they have like I just saw it recently. They had like the top RPI conferences, right? So number of schools, I think it was in the top 50 that they were looking at RPI in basketball. UCF is in the Big 12 conference. We had 7. The Big 10, I think, had 9, and the SEC had 9. So you tell me how the SEC has a better basketball conference than the Big 12.
It's not. Year to year, there can be some slight changes.
And out of conference, 2 wins. Yeah, I mean, Texas A&M was ranked before. They're a big money school, whatever. UCF wiped the floor with them twice in a row. We beat them twice in a row, right? So you can tell me what you want. Sorry, I know I'm going on a little bit of a tirade on this, but it really pisses me off. The SEC is not a basketball conference. They're being inflated by ESPN, and it'll shake out in the end. The Big 12 is the best basketball conference in the league. The Big 10 is right there, but even most of their teams during the season, they don't do well. They fall out during the rest.
And remember, we're talking now about 18-team leagues. Like if you're talking pound for pound, honestly, the ACC and us are probably the 2 best of the conferences that don't have 400 people in them. But I digress. I think the thing about basketball, I would rather create scarcity demand as a business function than expand and sell out. Because if we can get more than $20 a seat for the 200s, let's start talking. I don't think we're there yet. I think we have a great arena. I will say this, and I agree with you there, Roger. A bit of a better premium experience wouldn't be bad. That's of interest. I do think what would be better is taking some funding to the changes that were made for football, because if you're being objective, the stadium and what's going on in the stadium 2 years ago is a lot different now. The lean into nights after dark, the colored lights, more fireworks, air spray, like
fireworks.
Fireworks. The whole bit is much better. And if you don't want to give Mahadra flowers for something, be it. But that's him in
No,
the
I
field.
won't, because that's what's expected when you're in a Power 4 conference, right?
You're
So
not wrong,
let me
but we
finish.
didn't have it.
Let me finish. We weren't in a Power 4 conference, right? So again, go back to it. The execution on that was terrible. Do you remember the first year of the light shows and how some of the lights like went out in middle of the game? Like even
Yeah.
this year
Oh,
beginning. Let me
Jack
keep
State
going.
was bad. And
Yeah.
then 2 weeks later, or a week later, it was great. So
Yeah.
I will say this: let's get some of that experience in the basketball game. Like the basketball games are just not. It's not bad. It's the same thing it's been for decades. Let's get some more fun. Like let's do baby races all December. I don't care, but let's. I'd like to see some more in between entertainment or enhancement of that experience in the basketball stadium. If I had a magic wand.
Yeah, so the other part about that is like some of these TDT funds are being, since we talked about the TDT funds, are going to the other sports as well. So it's not just going to football. Obviously, Tower is the biggest difference maker on campus, but there is some going to the softball stadium. There's some going to a new track or soccer field, etc. Right? So there's other things that are going on there too. The basketball experience, the biggest thing that I see that needs improvement is the club areas. The club areas just are not differentiated enough. The other thing is for football is we have lost some of that experience. As we're talking about Terry and execution. You went from what we had before under Danny White, where we had motorcycles crisscrossing, doing tricks and a full like area in front of the stadium, to what we have now with some food trucks and Chick-fil-A and whatever. And it's just not the same thing, right? So I'm sorry, but I'm not going to throw, to your point where you said give him some kudos. Terry's execution on a lot of this stuff has been terrible. I mean, announcers, like the video board needs to be replaced now, so we'll get that. That's coming. So you've got folks, the beautiful video board that we've had, replays, all of that stuff has been a problem during football games. That's being changed and upgraded, so we'll get that. And there's supposed to be 2 smaller video boards that are going in the opposite end of the stadium as well. So that is on the horizon, but that's the big video board is first because it needs to be replaced after 10 years. They usually last about 10 years. So that will be replaced first. And then after that, they'll do the 2 smaller ones in the corners. Now, I want to leave on this for football, and then we'll go into hoops because we kind of organically went there. The Big 12 Conference, how it ended, Texas Tech number 1 at 8-1, BYU number 2 at 8-1. Then it's Utah at 7-2. The Cougs at 6-3, and they almost lost again. Arizona 6-3, Arizona State 6-3, then Iowa State, Kansas State, and TCU, and the Bear Kittens. What a terrible time for their program. I mean, they got beat by, who was it? Like some rando basketball program, and they just
Eastern Michigan.
And
That's and what Jam got like 8 points and 2 rebounds. Look, was it Wade is the dude that's there? I forgot the coach's name off the top. Wes. I can't pull the name off the top of my head. That's how good the coach must be. Because we we certainly know what other coaches were there. So, look, maybe it's an anomaly. Sometimes you have an off night, but you're not supposed to lose a bye game to Eastern Michigan. But we're not supposed to lose to Stetson. So,
yeah, but I think Eastern Michigan is worse than Stetson. Sorry,
it's a quad 4 loss. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad.
Yeah, it's really bad. And Wes Miller is their head basketball coach. But Cincinnati, that's all they do is talk about basketball, and it was terrible this year. So, but their football program, the bottom fell out. I told you guys when we played them, they weren't that great. There's a lot of teams that were not that much better than UCF, and we had 2 close games this football season that we should have won. But that, all of that being said, Cincinnati finished 5-4. Then it was Baylor, Kansas at 3-6. Kansas being one of the games we should have won. Then it was us and West Virginia at 2-7. the Colorado Buffaloes at 1-8, and rounding out the bottom is the Oklahoma State Cowboys at 0-9. Now, I will say this: it was not too long ago that we were dreaming of moving up to the Big East, or when West Virginia left the Big 12 left the Big East for the Big 12. And I remember what we thought of their program now. Now look at our program. It's not where we want it to be. It was ended up where we thought it would be, and it's still not the bottom of the pile. And to say that this program has gone from the AAC to where it is today, and what the expectations are of UCF football, that goes around what was built before, what the potential is, and where we're headed. So we've moved conferences every 7 or 8 years, and usually, with the exception of the MAC, we've ended up dominating that conference by the time we left. Do I think we will dominate this conference? Probably not, but we will be competitive in the conference for the next few years, and that's going to be important because I do believe realignment will happen again, and it'll continue to be contraction. So we need to make sure that we're above the waterline there. Okay, so let's go ahead and fully transition to hoops since we're talking hoops. You're right, Econ. I don't know if you meant Donnie or Johnny, because both of them pretty much had the same issue, although Donnie did better in conference, I think, than what Johnny has done in the past. But he's also, looking at this, I didn't have a lot of expectations for this hoops team this year, right? Because again, it was thrown together kind of like last year's team. But the strengths, what we've learned so far about this team is that different players, we've got enough offense that different players can carry the game for us at different times, which leads to winning basketball. It reminds me a lot. Now, again, I'm not saying we're as good as Houston, but it reminds me of Houston 2 or 3 years ago, where they had enough scoring that you couldn't shut anybody down, right? You couldn't shut down or focus on 2 players. You can't shut down DJ and, Key, and then you've shut down the offense for this game. Now, where they need to work is defense, and I do think it'll be a little bit different in the Big 12 conference. And the reason I say that is the Big 12 conference, the level of talent obviously is better, and their bigs are better. And that is one of the areas that we're struggling with, but we're starting to get better. Some of our bigs are rounding in form. The other thing that has really helped us this season is offensive rebounds and in assists to turnover ratio. We started off with a lot of turnovers early in the season, but we've kind of whittled those down as the team understands how we play at different times. You're also seeing not as much ISO ball anymore. There's more passing and more people cutting. We're not isolating people around the arc. We've got people that in the last 2 games, there's been a point of emphasis on points in the paint, actually 3 games. And the team has responded really, really, really well to that. So this last game that we played VMI 82-57. We shot, as good as we've been at shooting the 3, is we shot 13% and still won this game 82-57. We can score in the paint. We can score by running offensive sets, which we've not been able to do before. We've got the ability to score from 3 behind the arc in the paint, and then also the traditional, hey, let's get to the basket and score like what we did with DJ. The players themselves. So Jermichael Stillwell, 3rd. This was the 3rd time this season that he's had a triple-double. So it's a guy that's going to put 10 to 12 points in a game. He's going to get rebounds for you. And these players, if you look at like Stillwell and some of the players off that Houston team, Houston's teams were all mid to tall guards and forwards, and they didn't really have any big centers, right? And so they played heart and hustle and and all of that stuff, made sure they were on the glass. They didn't have to have the size to do that. And this team reminds me a lot of that team when it comes to that, right? So this game, Jermichael Stillwell had 21 points. Jordan Burks had 14 points. John Bowl had 6, which John Bowl is doing a lot better. From the beginning of the season till now. And remember, he was a freshman last year, didn't give very many minutes, came to us. He still needs to put on a few pounds to really be successful. Riley Coogin, 0 points this game. So this is a guy who's the leading scorer, has carried us quite a bit, and he didn't score any points. We shot 13% from the three-point line and still were able to win. Folks has got it figured out as far as the assist to turnover ratio. He was turning the ball over early, but now he's kind of figuring out the rest of his team, so that's been helping. And Jeremy Flamina, who wasn't someone who was one of our bigs that wasn't, didn't play very well early on. He's really turned it on, and he's an athletic big. He's a guy that can get it in stride. You saw the exciting transition offense that guys can run. So they're really, really, really getting out there. So that's what's different about this team is we can score in many different ways. We can run offensive sets. We can, we can run the dribble handoff. We can run. There's not one offensive style. We can run a Princeton style offense with guys cutting in the back, and we're able to pass effectively. We can shoot the three. And so if something's not working against a team or just for us in general in the shooting, we can still turn around, and we're still averaging 40 to 50% field goal percentage per game. If we continue to do that, to Econ Advisor's point, this Hoops team is for real. Like, I do think I didn't know what to make of them, and they're really showing to me that they can be flexible enough for the Big 12 and not just play strength versus strength.
Yeah, it's definitely it's interesting because when I was at the Hofstra game, I'm like, oh God, not again. And I know it's the first game and things like that. This is definitely the looks of a team that has started to figure out how they work well together. And in hindsight, being tied and close with Duke for the first half of that game in the preseason should have told us something. Even though we know was it Boozer Jr. and they're what, number 4? They beat UF today by a point. I think Econ was saying that, like, they're one of the top teams in the nation. And we hung for a while. And we weren't even close to being gelled yet. What I'm hoping is that we keep building and building. And what we see during conference is tough, good wins. We'll maybe middle of the pack, better. We'll see what we have. But what I really want to see is like the late January, early February run where they just get better and better and better. Wins or losses, close, whatever that looks and feels like. And if they're here now and they're good and they can build and grow towards the tournament and not just like fall off, I would say it's probably one of the better teams since we had Taco and Doc and Son at UCF. And I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, so that was back in 2019. I think one of the biggest things for me defensively, Econ, is yes, this team is more aggressive. They play traps better. They're more fundamental. Last year they had their hands up, which was good. It was always fun to watch. I like when they borrowed Johnny's like slam the court thing that they had going on. But I think the biggest thing this year, and December is always the biggest tell for us, right? Because December is where Johnny's teams typically fall flat. December on defensively is going to be interesting because we play an aggressive style of defense. Lots of hand checking, lots of physical basketball on the glass. And unfortunately for us, the Big 12 has not called whether it be football or basketball, to be frank. This past season in football was atrocious, but which is crazy because this season was the first season they're actually being graded. Now, the Kansas State game, after that game, the reffing crew that was reffing that game was pulled off of the next game. It was that bad. So, when you heard me talking about K-State and how bad the non-holding calls were on K-State, and the same thing with BYU, to be frank, there was a lot of non-calls on holding on BYU. But when it comes to basketball, that is going to be a hurdle because it is a more physical brand of basketball, but they're also a lot more ticky-tack on their fouls, especially on teams that are traditionally good teams. And we have a lot of them, right? So whether it be Kansas, the other thing is I'm convinced they do protect some of the legacy Big 12 teams too. So we'll see what happens. But if we can play that brand of defense, I love our press. We have the ability. We had one game where it was a little too early. We started running the clock a little too early. But that press, our team is good enough at the press and athletic enough to run the press for a long enough period of time that we weren't able to do that before, but it can be a difference maker in the last 8 to 11 minutes of a game. And it turns into a lot of runs. So that's the part that I'm excited about on defense because it gets us out in transition, and we've done really, really well on transition offense this year so far. But how do we do against the bigs on the rebounds? That's number one. Number two, how much of that defense can we get away with in the Big 12, right? Without getting called. Whereas out of conference, they tend not to call that unless you're playing like the Duke game or whatever. Let's not mention that, how lopsided the calls were there. But they tend not to do that. So can we sustain that defense in the Big 12? The good news for us is even if we don't, we've got enough depth on offense and enough depth on the bench to be able to bring those players on and not have the huge swings that we had before. It also means that we can limit the number of minutes that these guys are seeing this year. And because we have that depth and we do lose, but we don't lose as much, that means we can be more judicious with the minutes that we put out there for the starters and also with different lineups to get them breathers throughout the season because we didn't have that. Playing at Duke and versus LSU in exhibition showed us where we want to be. LSU, we should have won that game. The team fell apart. But again, it was earlier on in the season. This team had not played together. None of that. So I don't read too much from that. I think we didn't have the consistent play in both of those games, and with LSU, especially at the end. We were not hitting. They weren't playing great defense, and we were just not hitting our shots. And so we got a little frustrated and forced some things and didn't play our brand of basketball. I think this team learned from that. You saw that with the Texas A&M game, that they learned from that and not to speed themselves up. Econ also says Dawkins' challenges out of bounds calls have all been won. That's the ref's fault. That's true, because when that happens, the Big 12 is the one are the folks that are doing those reviews. Bowl and Femina have developed. Burks can be a star. Kugel brings emotion. Folks finally figured out how to thrive in Dawkins' system. Yes, I think the biggest thing with Folks is this. He's been coached well enough that he understands, or remember, because he was a scoring guard at his previous stop, right? He's been coached well enough to understand, hey, don't get trapped in the baseline. Make sure you have an out, because that was my frustration with him. He would drive the paint and then constantly kick. He's scoring again. He's being told, hey, it's okay for you to go take it, because you have to have opposing defenses think that you're a scoring threat. Otherwise, the whole point of him doing that is either I'll get a foul or I'll pass the ball off to somebody that sneaks from the baseline. But if you're not a scoring threat, the defense doesn't have to transition its help defense in so that you have three guys basically covering one so you can kick out to somebody else for an easier bucket. And so that's changed, right? So Folks has figured that out. Hey, I'm going to go drive the paint and I'm going to finish. The other thing is he doesn't have a right hand. he cannot dribble with the right hand. So he's figured out who he can go to. And I think the team, if you watch the way that they play now, they always have someone either there for him to either set a screen for him, um, or they have someone with help whenever he's forced to the right side. So teams in the Big 12 will take advantage of that. They have better defenses as well. So it'll be interesting to see how he does there. That's where I think having those extra players that can be scorers for you, being able to play a different style of offense, whether it's Princeton, whether it's 3-and-D, whether it's pick and roll, dribble handoff. And we've been doing mid and roll lately, which is instead of doing a traditional pick and roll, we're doing that in the middle of the paint, and that's been working for us, especially with Famina. That's where he's really shined. He's been a lot more aggressive. Him and Cambridge have really come on. The other thing that's interesting for me is Chris Johnson and Chris Parker. Chris Johnson and Chris Parker have both come on. Chris Parker he's like an energy guy / almost like shooting guard 3, so that can handle the rock. Chris Johnson is another point guard that can handle the rock and can finish himself. He's really, really good. He's got great handles. So we were expecting a lot out of him as well. And he's got speed. And then Econ says, yeah, Chris Johnson shows he can excel as a backup point, so Coogin doesn't have to play that role. 100%. I think he could be the primary point. If we need someone who has better ball handling skills against a good defense, I could see him getting into the rotation. Do I think he's going to take Fultz's space? No. But I do think against better defenses, we could use him, or at least, even if he's not the starter, give him significant amount of minutes because he can break down a defense with his handles. And you're right. Parker is a slasher to the basket and can rebound. Exactly. That's why I was saying he's like that 3. He's like a 3, right? So small forward type of guy with a lot of energy and speed. All right. So I broke all of that down. I mean, you can't really read much from VMI, right? But this is what I've seen so far this season that makes me have hope that this team is going to be different than the ones that we've had in years past. Anything you want to add to that, Josh?
So, yes, and
okay.
Let's just think about their only actual loss. Their only actual loss is to, I think, a still undefeated Vandy.
Correct.
And and they're already in the top 25. And it wasn't like we got completely, we didn't get completely hosed that entire game. And I'm not sure if it was that game per se, but there was a time where we were starting to kind of gel more as a team, and it was getting close to that point. I think if we play them again, it'd still be a competitive game, and possibly even a more competitive game. So when you're looking at who we're playing, it's not a complete bunch of duds, right? There's some competitive teams who will be good in their conferences, some more competitive than others, and the proof is in the pudding. Like, when you've watched basketball enough, you can tell when you're like, nah, this is not going to work. That was kind of like last year. Last year, you could tell by late December, early January, maybe, but a lot of things have to go right. I feel like we're at the point where so many things are doing well, and so many things are like we can win with like 30% shooting on a 3. Like just we can win in different ways. We can win with. I wish Alan was here if I took some time. Like at least 4 different people leading in scoring, maybe 5 through our 8-9 games. It isn't just the Hall show. It isn't just the Sellers show. It is a good collective group that all can lead in different ways, or back up, and we just don't fall off a cliff and we have to throw back in, a big because there's nothing behind it. So I feel like we're in the most optimistic place we've been since the pandemic, I guess, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things, right? One, the AAC, what's different is our RPI, right? So a lot of that has started to come out. UCF actually in the last couple of days, and UCF, when we start looking at preseason, we talk about bubble teams. What you do in the early on in the season is really, really important. So the Vandy loss, that was a quad one loss, so that's not going to hurt as much, right? And it wasn't like they blew us out. It was 93-105. They've been scoring. I think they're averaging over 99 points a game right now. Texas A&M right now is a quad two loss, so that or a quad two win, so that helps. Pitt right now is a quad two win. Quinnipiac is a quad three win. So
they were good. They're going to be a good team. A decent team. As I said, we don't have any stinkers out there. And of our only loss, no one's going to say, "Oh, you lost to Vandy. That was a bad ever." In like the last how many years that they've been good at basketball, like that's just not a bad loss in probably this decade. So
I think
good.
Yeah, I think that combined with the fact that we're not going to have any RPI killers in our conference, that's the other thing that really helps. Like in the American, you had to either win the conference to go to the tournament. It was not it was a 2-bid league early, but then it, like when Memphis died and Penny like killed that program, it was no longer a 2-bid league. Now, if we do well out of conference, we set ourselves up for an 8-8 season and still be a bubble team that makes the tournament, right? So the RPI will not be killed because we are in the Big 12 conference. So if we have a competitive team in the Big 12 conference, we should be technically more than likely tournament bound. This team, I think, can be competitive. I think this is not a conference winning roster right now, just simply because of who we have in the conference. But if you put us in other conferences, I think they'd be contending for a title, right? So it's a big deal. Yeah, Vandy ranked 16, 17 in the polls. ESPN projects. Yeah, ESPN projects 9 or more bids from the Big 12. Considering how big of a program we are, and that's one of the advantages of absorbing some of the schools that we did from the Pac in Arizona and Arizona State. That helped. Utah, they're hit or miss. Some years they have, a tournament team. Most years they didn't. But you've got teams like West Virginia, typically Cincy, once they get rid of Wes Miller, and Kansas. Yeah, I mean, Kansas, TCU always does well. Baylor had a national championship winning team. What was it, 3 years ago? So this is a conference that is not going to hurt us in basketball. It's only going to help as long as we do what we do outside of, out of conference. So super exciting stuff for hoops. I'm cautiously excited, cautiously more than optimistic, cautiously excited to see what we do in conference play. I don't think we'll see the big fall off that we did in past years, just simply because we can score in a lot more different ways. And I think because, I think because we can score in different ways, and I think because our depth of this team is better than what it has been. And the team is getting better because they're playing well together. More pieces are making a bigger difference. And, some of our bigs, specifically Famina and Bowl, which were troublesome early on, I think they're starting to get with it, and we're figuring out how to use them. All right, so let's go ahead and swim it yet again off of hoops. Swim it. And let's do a little bit of listener love. So this week, let me say this, first of all, it was Thanksgiving last week. One of the things I wanted to say is I'm thankful for all of you that are tuning in. Obviously, those of you that comment and participate in the live conversation. Econ, here's looking at you, and several others. But, we're very, very thankful because you guys make the show. So thank you for that. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing it with your friends. And that's really, really important. Unfortunately, we don't do socials as much as we should because we're just so busy. So having that organic growth is really, really important for us. So thank you for doing that. So shout out to Econ. He hit us up 3 times on 3 different videos. Says no chance for BYU, which is paranoid enough to be sure the committee is out to get them. No margin of victory offsets the 6 mediocre schools they beat this year. Their fault. They refuse to schedule weak preseason opponents. Yes and no. I think BYU is a fundamental team. I don't think they have the athletes to make as big of a difference. Fields wouldn't have been as dominant, but they have really, really good lines, which means they have the ability to be a really, really good team. I just think it's one of those teams that is going to have one of those collapse games in the playoffs. How to stop a running QB? UCF historically weak doing that. We did pretty good in stopping him from running. We kept he didn't really extend plays all that much. There were a few on 3rd and 4th downs, but by and large, we held him in check. Martin is not a breakaway threat, and it's pure luck. BYU's running back, wide receivers, and tight ends have avoided injury. Actually, they got their leading wide receiver back for this game, continuing the tradition of UCF football. But it's one of those things that we just have to consistently do well and get off the field. And we did it early and we didn't do it later. And I think we just wore our defenses out. Just to kind of put this in perspective and how good of a defense this was this year. Our defense was 3 points out of being a top 50 scoring defense. Right? So again, it's a pretty good defense. 1 less field goal, and we let more later on in the season but this was a pretty good defense. All right. The other thing I want to say about this is there were several of you that joined us as followers. So thank you guys. Again, have your settings to private, so I can't call you out, but thank you. Also, for those that are interacting with Twitter, thank you so much. And we appreciate everything that you're doing and being part of the show. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Please like, subscribe, follow, and tell your friends. Josh, yes. Do you have a sometimes funny fact of the week?
I do. I do. And we're starting to get towards the most wonderful time of the year. So getting fun facts is kind of hard, but this one kind of fell into my lap when I was doing my research for my other segment. Give me a number. The number of players. Maybe you're right. Give me a number. Econ, feel free to play along in maybe 2017. Don't check online. I think it was 2017 national champs and maybe some others that are being silent here. What is the number of players on our tennis team that have won an ITF Pro tournament?
Wow. Tennis. You're pulling that one out of left field. I'm going to say, are we talking men's and women's or just men's?
Men's.
Okay. I'm going to say 3.
Okay. We'll see if we get any in the comments too. I'll give it a second and build up some anticipation. We had a student that won their first ever ITF professional title. Ooh, like that. So we have one, and I'm not seeing anything in the comments, so I'll knock it out. So the answer is 2. We have 2 players on our team that have notched a ITF Pro Tournament win. Nico Oliveira won his first ever ITF professional title, I think it was last week, or within the last 7 days since the old podcast. So I saw that on the news. I'm like, you know what? I don't need to put that in the things that everyone except for like me and Roger don't watch or pay attention to. I could just do that here because what else we got? So I thought that was good.
Way to end that segment, because what else we got? Gosh, Josh. All right.
I mean, I'm being honest. What do we have? We have men's basketball, women's basketball. We have football. No, we don't. We have 2 basketball teams, and
that's it for a bit, right? So we got we got baseball, that's a spring sport. Softball's a spring sport. Volleyball's done for
Yeah.
the season. So yeah, there's a little bit of lulls, but that's okay. We will fill that with basketball and a bunch of other stuff that we haven't been talking about because of the football segments. So I've got some ideas for that.
Yes.
That being said, you mentioned UCF women's basketball. So let's talk a little bit about them. Surprise, surprise, they are 6-2 for the season. They just finished a tournament in which they beat our old AAC and Conference USA foes, ECU. They played Wake Forest and took them to overtime, and then beat Rice most recently. Now, again, they haven't played any big name teams. Like, we're not playing Baylor's, etc. Right? But we're still 6-2. So what? I know you follow women's basketball a little bit closer than I do. Early on this season, I was out on them. Tell us a little bit more about women's basketball.
Well, here's what I can tell you. So I went to the first practice, and there's some players I was like, okay, it felt a little bit better than last year. How about that? I didn't know how far they were going to get. I think we even talked about here. It's like there's some players, right? And I'd say cautiously optimistic, realizing that we just don't. I'll be frank, we're not putting the funds into this stuff, and anyone who's halfway decent is going to leave for any money. So 6-2, I'm a little about that Charlotte loss. That was not a good loss, and it was a very close loss. Wake Forest was one of the first teams that we actually had was competitive, like really good. They didn't play too many like amazing teams either, but they didn't lose either. And that was a pretty tough overtime loss. It was back and forth, and it was tight at the end. And Rice again wasn't not a slouch of a team either. They had some decent wins. So the way I'm seeing it right now, you have Harmon who's just killing it. Right, she had a Big 12 starting 5 nod for her week last week. She was averaging 19.5 points against those 4 games. Had 27 points against Rice, so she's doing solid, and she's actually number 7 in the conference with 17.4 points per game. So she's doing a great job, and it's not just her. They went 3-1. During that week, they went 2-1 at the Discover Puerto Rico shootout. There's some, I would say, good vibes. So that they're playing better. They're playing how we expect. Do I expect them to knock on their back? No. Phenomenal team, right? We have some really good women's basketball teams in this conference, as you talk about Baylor and others. And Brittany Gardner is not coming out of that locker room for them either. That's what happens when Kim Mulvaney goes to LSU. So we have a good conference. Now, do I expect us to get more than 1 or 2 wins in the conference? Yeah. Do I expect us to be 500 in the conference? Probably not. All I'll say is this: it's going to be a better season than it was last year, is my guess from what I've seen. They do have a few new coaches that have come in on the team too. So right now, like, vibes are good. Again, we're not playing world beaters. We'll see what happens in December 20th when BYU comes into town, and then we start play against
Kansas,
Baylor, TCU. We have think about this in January. Listen to this back to back. And I will tell you, TCU on January 24th at home on Saturday at 2 p.m. That might be a game I'm going. Yeah, I might go to. I'm coming back from a conference, so maybe. Going out to a conference. We have Baylor, which is number 15 in Waco. We have TCU at home with the Little Knights alumni night. And they're going to make a big marketing push for that, because by the time they get there, there might be a top 5 team. And then they have Iowa State, which is number 10 in Ames. This is the type of conference we're in. This is not Conference USA anymore. This is not the American. This is hey, let's get to February where we're against number 24 Oklahoma State in Stillwater. Then we get to go. Then we get to go 4 days later to Morgantown with West Virginia's number 21 right now, and then the day before my birthday or the day after Valentine's Day for most of the rest of you, we get to see Baylor at home. So like it's a gauntlet. We have some great games. I'm hoping we are. It's not just like us in Houston at the bottom. I hope we get a little bit beyond, a little bit of improvement. The team deserves it. I feel like there's some positive momentum. Maybe 3 wins in conference, 4 wins in conference, maybe more. It's kind of hard when you have 8 or so games against top 25 opponents. So I feel like I'm not even done with my segment, dude. I see the time. I feel like.
Oh, no. I'm not looking at that. I'm looking at, I don't see anything else to put in here. We're talking about the only thing in your segment.
We were talking about volleyball. I'll finish up with volleyball quickly.
All right, fine. I'll knock off the music.
I'm getting the wrap-up music like this is the Oscars. Look, we're playing against some massive.
I haven't even introduced your other segment yet.
I know, and you're still playing me off. Look, I will say this. I feel like the team has some flow. There's some freshmen that are coming over from overseas that when they were practicing, I'm like, okay, can they hang? Great, but there's some freshmen that I feel that are talented. Hopefully, they rise to the occasion and do what I hope they're going to do and stick around. That would be nice. Some that's coming from new coaches that are come from overseas too. I just I'm excited. I'm excited to see what comes of this team, and I think they're doing what generally I would expect. So let's see if we can get close in one of our ranked games. Let's see if we can hit 3. I know this is low. I know this is not the expectations you want, but like, let's double the amount of conference wins last year, which is not a lot. But let's see how far we can get with a team that's doing pretty darn good, and Leah Harmon is just kind of killing it. Let me explain how much is killing it, and then we'll go to my segment. Currently, out of the 8 games we've played, we have two players. No, we have 1 player with 4 3-pointers made. Harmon is 20. And that 4 is 4 for 24 on attempts. Let's be fair here. There's a couple people who are playing about 6-8 games that have a better percentage, but like when it comes to the outside threat, we have 1 or 2. They're doing better on drives and things like that. We have a clear number 1 player, very clear number 1 player. And we have a couple more behind her that are doing pretty good. So I feel like let's see what happens in the conference. An improvement this year would be nice, and it looks like there's the possibility of that happening.
Awesome. Yeah. I hope so. I told you at the beginning of the season, I didn't really have high hopes for Satya Messer and her squad this year. So hopefully they surprise us. Again, they're playing easier schedules than what they did in prior years, but yeah, we'll see what they do. All right. So Josh.
Yes.
Since I didn't start playing the music yet, I'm going to go ahead and give you a quick ask you to do your quick update on other UCF sports that Alan and Andrew do not watch and probably trade to, but that's okay. All right, go ahead.
So we talked about the women's basketball team. They're 6-2. We told you who they beat and who they did not in the Discover Puerto Rico Classic. Coming up this week are 2 home games versus Stetson. That's tomorrow if you're watching live on Wednesday, December 3rd at 7 p.m. and versus Delaware State on December 7th at 1 p.m. So that's what's coming up now before we get like 2 weekends of ridiculous ranked teams. We also have volleyball, and Roger's been talking about volleyball, how there might be a possibility of getting to the NCAA tournament with our wins percentage and who we've beaten. The problem is RPI not high enough. Bad losses to teams we shouldn't lose to, like Brown and others, a couple of others. And no matter how many teams we beat, and because we do not have a conference tournament, and I think the Big 12 should change that. Your mark, Big 12 volleyball tournament. We could probably get 11 teams in the NCAA tournament if we had a volleyball tournament. Unfortunately, after beating K-State in 5 sets and losing to Kansas, number 13 Kansas, won 3, we missed out on the NCAA tournament. And despite 10 teams making it. So it's unfortunate. I wish the women had a better outcome, but that's the way the cookie crumbles.
I think the biggest thing for us that hurt us this year was definitely the fact that we had very high highs, beating some very, very good teams, and then we would turn around and lose to some teams that we should not. They had a good enough record to make the tournament. It's just those losses, and they had good enough RPI wins, high enough quad 1 RPI wins to make the tournament. Just some of those losses. I mean, it was crazy. You'd have I think it was 3 or 4 games in a row where we beat someone that was in the top 25, and then the next game we would lose to someone we shouldn't have lost to. And that's ultimately what undid our hopes for the season. But it's still progress over last year and progress over the year before that. As much as I loved our coach, great person, big part of the program, was with Todd Dagenet forever. I've known her for 10 years. Would have loved to see her succeed, but brought in a coach that is really, really good. Same way we did with men's soccer. You're starting to see the fruits of all of that labor. That being said, football season is over for us. There's still lots of off-season talk to talk about. We've got recruiting coming up, so make sure you're keeping your eyes peeled starting 7 o'clock tomorrow through Friday. Although it's only 13 commitments we're expecting, actually it's probably 12 that will sign, because one that's actually it'll be 13 that'll sign, one that isn't able to sign until they get their academic stuff situated. And there's one, it'll be 14 commitments that we're expecting in the Under Armour game. If you guys are joining late, we went through the rosters and who we're expecting to keep. We went through the rosters on who we're expecting to get. We went through and DFOG. If you're not following DFOG, make sure you're following DFOG 23. He breaks. He's very tied in as far as recruiting is concerned. And we've got portal coming. So check it out.
No. See, I know you're trying to wrap up. See what he just dropped in there. If you read for some big portal news tomorrow, look at that at the end of the laptop. I'm excited to see what happens.
That's why you stay to the end and talk about women's basketball that nobody else watches. Anyway, that being said, thank you all for following, subscribing. Make sure that you're commenting. Love for you guys to be part of the conversation here. Make sure you're sharing with your friends. Go Knights and
charge on. It's a lot easier when it's just one person here to do the charge on, because we don't have to look at each other and sync like